Salve Maria. Very often we overlook the dignity of a priest. To give us an idea of the dignity he possesses, let us consider a fact that even the angels in heaven were not given the grace to bring the real presence of God on earth in the Eucharist. So, in a certain sense, a priest is higher than the angels. Saint John Marie Vianney, patron saint of the priests, once said, "If I were to meet a priest and an angel, I would greet first the priest and then the angel. The latter is a friend of God, but the priest is his own representative." So, whom better to look upon for an understanding of this dignity than the model the Holy Church herself has given for all priests, Saint John Marie Vianney. There's a lot that can be said about St. John Marie Vianney because he was one of the greatest saints of the 19th century. His life presents so many facets that one can always draw new lessons from it. He was a poor seminarian who had very little intelligence, remarkably little. He had to make a lot of effort to follow his studies at the seminary and twice even failed the examination required before his ordination. His intellectual insufficiency gave a lot of concern about his priestly vocation. Finally, when he was around 30 years old, he barely managed to complete his priestly studies and was ordained. The bishop, not knowing what to do with this dull priest, sent him to a little known village in the south of France named Ars. There he began his priestly ministry, which would permeate all of Europe with its light and from there spread throughout the entire world. So, what is it that distinguished this saint? Even though he didn't have any natural qualities to make him an exceptional priest, he became an exemplary minister of God, an extraordinary apostle, a confessor with a very rare discernment, and a preacher who exercised a deep influence over souls. What was the reason for the success of his ministry? St. Teresa of the Child Jesus used to say, "For love, nothing is impossible." This means that one who truly loves our Lord and Our Lady will obtain the means to do what divine providence wants of him. This applies perfectly to St. John Marie Vianney. For example, let us look at his preaching. He became an extraordinary preacher. He prepared his own sermons to the best of his ability and then he studied them. They were not sermons touching on the highest topics of theology. They were common topics of catechism for the people. But when he talked, he spoke with such conviction, with such a great love for God, with words so blessed that the graces of these sermons could be felt in the depths of their souls and touched all those who heard him. One interesting point to note is that St. John Marie Vianney had a very weak voice, and in those times when microphones didn't exist, the multitudes gathered to listen to his preaching, filling the church of Ars and the pews, and they often could not hear him. Even though persons at a distance could only hear a few loose words here and there, his sermons converted many people. And even though people did not hear him at all, they converted nevertheless, only from the effect of seeing him. In his great spiritual masterpiece titled Soul of the Apostolate, Don Chotard records an interesting incident. An impious lawyer went to Ars to mock its unlearned curate. But when he reached there, he converted. Someone asked him, "What did you see there?" He answered, "I saw God in a man." One could see that God was with him and in him. This is one of the greatest homages a man can ever receive. The blessings from his sermons and the charisma of his words extended far and wide, all over Europe and throughout the whole world, and they started pilgrimages to ours. This was one of the reasons for the countless conversions St. John Marie Vianney wrought. He was also a martyr of the confession. He spent many hours there, hearing thousands of confessions and giving countless absolutions. We don't realize the tremendous penance it requires of a priest to spend long hours listening to the profound moral things people do. In the confession, he applied the advice of St. Alphonsus Liguori, not to hurry through the confession, to be patient, to consider each penitent as if he were the only person to be heard, and to help him to conquer each one of his defects and sins. So he waged war against each sin and insisted on the practice of virtue, encouraged good behavior, and often denied absolution to hardened sinners. Yes, if he could not be convinced that the person was seriously repentant, he denied absolution to that person. He was an enemy of dancing. Let's not forget that the dances of those times were far different from the immoral and outrageous dances of today. The young ladies were completely covered and had skirts that reached to the floor. If he had condemned those dances of those days, what would he say about the dances of today? His condemnation went so far as to deny absolution to those who would not promise to stop going for these dances. Many persons would go to other churches to receive absolution. Hearing this, he simply commented, if other priests want to send them to hell, it is up to them. This extraordinary saint spent all of his time in the church, at the pulpit, the confessional, or the altar. At night, when he returned to his room, one might think that he would at least get a well-deserved rest. But no, it was a time for a new battle, this time against the devil himself. For decades, he fought a nightly battle with a devil whom he called Rapin, in which the devil physically assaulted him and tormented him with deafening noises and insulting words. On the night before a possessed person would come to confess to St. John Marie Vianney, the devil would inflict stronger torments on him. Once, he even set the curé's bed on fire. In response, St. John Marie Vianney used to increase his spiritual penances, flagellations, and even prayers to win the graces of God, so that his words would have a deep effect on the person and bring about the needed conversion. It is beautiful to consider that to further increase his apostolate, God gave him the gift of miracles. In fact, he worked so many miracles, but he did not attribute any of them to himself. In his church, he built a small altar to Saint Philomena and attributed all the miracles to her. I will mention just one, an extraordinary fact that reveals his gift of reading souls, also known as the discernment of spirits. This fact was reported by one of his penitents, a young lady who belonged to the Daughter of St. Mary's Association. She went for confession to the curé of ours. After she knelt, she began to tell the events from her past life, to which the curé asked her, "Do you remember that you went to a ball on such and such an occasion?" She said, "Yes, I do remember." He asked her, "Do you remember that at a certain moment, a handsome young man entered the ballroom? He was quite elegant, appeared very upright, and danced with several young ladies." She said, "Yes, I do." "Do you recall that you had a great desire to dance with him?" And she said, "I recall that." And he asked her, "Do you recollect that you became sad that he didn't ask you to dance with him?" She said, "Yes, I do." And he asked her, "Do you remember that by chance you looked down at his feet and you saw a strange blue light coming from them?" And she was shocked and she replied, "Yes, I do remember." Until now, everything he described to the young lady came from his gift of discernment, because he naturally knew nothing about her past. Then he made an astonishing revelation. The young man was none other than the devil himself, who had taken shape to tempt several of the young women there. He was unable to approach and touch this girl because she was a daughter of Mary, protected by her, and she was wearing the miraculous medal. The fact that I just narrated is rich in lessons. It also explains the extraordinary fame that spread because of incidents like this. For he used to read the souls of many such penitents who came to him for confession throughout the small village of ours, throughout France, Europe, and the whole world. St. John Marie Vianney is the patron saint of priests, as we all know. So, let us ask that through his intercession, priests may imitate his virtues and be zealous ministers of God, so that whoever comes in contact with them may also exclaim, I saw God in a man. If you like this video and would like to know more about the lives of many other saints who are the gems of Christendom, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your comment and share it with your friends and family. May Our Lady guide us through these difficult times. Hope to see you in the next video. Salve Maria!